You are smart in a lot of ways, but Instagram is not one of them, apparently.
Well, until you do, like, there's no logic to social media. Like,
No.
until you do it, it's just a complete mystery. Once you do
Yeah.
it, you're like, oh yeah, there you go.
I take it for granted because I've done this since Fred Flintstone was my first listener and follower. So yeah, yeah. I'll give you one suggestion. Pop the camera down a little bit because all we see is the Howie Mandel head. There we go. All right. And then like a little more. There you go. All right. Guys, that's Dan French, my friend, Dr. Dan French. He is a rhetorician. He actually has a PhD in rhetoric. And the other day I wrote a post on social media and about like people kind of being contentious about different topics. And he said, you know, it's because people clearly and they're not processing properly. And it's actually the subject of his next book coming out very soon. So I wanted to have him on to talk about this. So Dan, welcome, welcome.
Hello, hello. I'm getting all set up here.
Yes.
Tech this. How's this? How's that?
It's perfect. And the little GQ little chin shot is just the icing on the cake, man.
Okay. That's what I'm all about.
Yes. So let's just start there where you read my post the other day and you're like, hey, I think I have something to contribute to this, and where we are kind of with the way people are thinking and a lot of people not thinking right now, it could be good to just lay the groundwork for why you decided you wanted to talk to me about this.
Well, I see you posting a lot on this stuff. I see Keith posting a lot on this stuff.
Keith Norris, right.
Yeah. And it's, you know, it's all the same issue of, so let's start with this as a background. Like when you study rhetoric, logic is a huge component of it.
Yes.
Right? And so logic is really three things. Logic is a pool of qualified information that's already been vetted that you can rely on. All right? That's the outcome of logic. And nobody believes in that anymore. They don't trust the reservoir of knowledge. No. So that's one thing. The second thing is the process itself. Like, how do you get that reservoir filled up? And that's by going through logical process, which is very structured, very procedural. It's been developed over thousands of years by human beings all the way back to the Greeks. And you have to know it to be able to follow it to get good information into the reservoir. Okay? And then the third part is you have to communicate with logic to get that information out of the reservoir and into people. So you have three parts that can go wrong. Information collection, that's quality, and then processing that gets you good information, and then communicating that knowledge to others.
Well, and let's start with the information collection, because I think the reason people don't think clearly is they're very one-sided in the information sources that they use to develop, I guess, the belief that they have, the fact that they have. And so that's the problem too. People aren't diversified enough in the kinds of arguments they're exposed to.
Diversity means nothing in logic.
Okay.
Absolutely zero. The fact that you get 10 sources and 9 of them are bad is actually a problem in logic.
Okay, so how do you find the good ones?
Well, again, logic gives you processes for vetting things so that you can. Logic is like I said, it's not a human interaction system. It's a very like almost software that a computer would follow to vet information. And so one of the things you hear people a lot is they'll talk about our argument process, which is what you're talking about. So people are using pseudo logic or bad logic to try to get to their information systems. And so they end up putting things like that, like, oh, you need multiple sources in order to have good information. And it's not true. That's an untrue statement.
Well, a lot of that's the journalistic kind of ethic of diversifying your sources of a story. You can't just have one source, not trustworthy. But what if that one source is the source of the information? It's very good and very trustworthy.
Yeah, so in rhetoric, you have ethos, which is where you qualify somebody's character. So, and I had this argument, so I got booted off of YouTube for violations.
Really?
They didn't tell me what the violations were. No. So I found a way around and went through YouTube support, and they ended up reinstating me. But they actually, I think what had happened is I got labeled as spam for some reason. I think I got hacked.
Yeah.
So, but when I came back, I posted a thing with Emily Deans. Do you know Emily?
Of course.
You know, Harvard psychiatrist, super smart, cool person, where we talked about vaccines, about getting vaccines into resistant arms. Like, why do people resist this? And she deals a lot with this with psych populations
Right.
that have a lot of paranoia and suspicion and all that kind of stuff. And so it was just a discussion about if you're going to do that, if you want to get more shots in arms, how do you do it?
Yeah.
And then they flagged that and said, we got to take that off because that's bad content. And I wrote them and said, you literally picked the exact opposite. We are trying to help compromised populations think their way through this.
Well,
so look at it again.
Well, YouTube has abdicated their responsibility for thinking clearly because they have algorithms that are artificial intelligence that listens for the key words, and that's why yours got triggered. Not that you said anything inherently bad or misinformation or whatever you want to label it. It's just that you said some sequence, or Emily said some sequence of words that they went, nope, taking that down.
Yeah, and I get it. Like, there's billions of people posting stuff on there. You cannot hire enough people to go through every one. And I told them, like, that's an hour-long podcast interview that's incredibly detailed. There's no way you went through it and decided something was invalid. So ethos, what I tried to argue with them, and I may try to go back to YouTube and do some consulting with them, is that what you should do is set up like a speed pass, like for people that are pre-vetted, just like at the airport. You don't have to put them through security every time because you trust them. They're a trusted source. And then you don't have to look at their content all the time. But that's a more advanced way of looking at logic, and because you can't go to the content, it's not going to work. You can't vet that much content. So,
if they start from a business perspective, they would make that a business perk that if you paid a certain amount of money, we will put you through the process. Like I have TSA pre-check for when I go to the airport so I can jump. Same thing.
Yeah, Instagram pre-check.
Yeah.
We've decided that you're a viable human being who's got some decent things to say, and we're just going to let you say them.
What's funny is I got booted from YouTube in August of 2019, just like you. No reason given, just poof, all my videos for 15 years just overnight disappeared. And of course, I'm talking about all the social media, and enough of my fans harangued them enough that they finally reinstated me. And it was just like one little word. I think I had done parking lots, and I did a video about that, and they heard the word or saw the word suicides. Oh, somebody showed live killing. I'm like, yeah, I was killing myself, but not literally. I was in a parking lot killing my body doing the parking lot suicides. But it's amazing, and it's all about they weren't nobody was thinking that was some machine that did that.
Yeah, and even if they were thinking, it doesn't matter because logic and language gets very complex very quickly. You can literally mean the exact opposite of what you say.
Yes.
Changing your tone.
Yes. There's no nuance. There's
no computer, no machine is going to be able to read that.
No, machines can't pick up sarcasm, comedy. Oh my gosh, guys, he's a former comedian. Dan is. I guess you're still a comedian because you're always a comedian. You're not occupationally a comedian. Once were.
I'm not traveling doing comedy clubs at the moment. Yes.
Oh, good. Good. I'll have to catch a show sometime. But yeah,
I'm not doing it.
Oh, you're not. Okay. Yeah. You would.
I'll get back to it.
If they paid enough, you would.
So the point is, like, this stuff gets very complicated very quickly, and even breaking into those three areas, like I did to start, like, hey, just look at your information pool, look at your process for getting there, and now look at how you're talking to get that information to other people. Nobody does that.
No, it's the process part. I mean, I think most people have at least an ability to get to the information, but the processing is where everything gets effed up, like bad. And it's because people, they're not critically thinking. And I think this is a big part of kind of what you're going to talk about in your second book that you're writing, which when you told me the title, I'm like, oh my gosh, yes. Like we need why America isn't thinking or something like that.
Yeah, why America can't think.
Yes, why America can't think.
Our thinking processors are clogged up.
It is so where we are right now. And let's just jump into one of the hot topics. It's masks. I mean, people either fall on one side or the other, and the nuance of the discussion, the nuance of processing why some people embrace it, why others don't, how you convince people that it's a good thing if they think it's a good thing, how do you convince people, oh, you're killing yourself if you're wearing one. Like, there's so much contentiousness around it that processing just becomes so blurred. Nobody knows what to think or knows how to think.
Yeah, so let's like try to use the apparatus, because this is what professors do. Try to give you an intellectual apparatus and then take you through it so many iterations, so many
Yes.
times that it'll become part of your apparatus. So information pool, like your reservoir of information that you trust, and then process, and then communicating. So right now, like, you have things in your information reservoir, I assume, that I would not agree with.
Right.
Okay? Like with masks. You seem to think masks are a bad idea. Is that correct?
For myself, yes.
No, that's just a dodge.
For others, I don't care. No, it's not a dodge. It's actually what it is. For me, I don't. All right, hold on. Let's get this one a little bit. There's layers to this, Dan, because
always. That's my point. It's very complicated.
I'm not fearing them having to wear a mask because I'm not truly worried about the ramifications of the virus. Whereas others that are worried about the ramifications
For yourself.
of the virus, because they have a family member that got sick or because whatever, they're going to triple mask because, oh my gosh, you can never be too careful. And so that's why I have the position I do. I don't fear this virus, therefore I don't have to put on anything on my face.
Right, but that's fear for you.
What?
You don't fear the virus for you.
Correct. Or others.
You don't think anybody has suffered from this virus.
No, that's not what I said. I said I don't fear for the people, except for very elderly people and very immunocompromised people. Those are the people that I think should be very careful doing all the things. But for
healthy people, so this is the thing, like processes we're going through.
Yeah.
So if you look down into process, if you want to use logic,
yeah,
like there's a little 7 segments array that I can teach you that would be very useful. So claims, evidence, qualifiers, refutation, warrants, conclusions, and action warrant. This is going to be the basis of my book. So claims are just what we're doing here. We're
right.
Just throwing, you don't think it's dangerous. You don't
No.
think the virus is dangerous.
No, I'm saying for someone.
Except for compromised populations.
Correct.
Okay. So what about the people? So that's a claim, right?
Yeah.
It's a claim you have. You've probably moved it over into conclusion.
Well, I'm open to having evidence presented to me. I think, again, layers here. Because
it's fine. They're all complicated.
Statistically, the people that aren't the old and aren't the multiple comorbidities, immunocompromised, they're the ones getting the worst ramifications of that. If you remove all those people from the pool, you're looking at a 99.99% chance, and that's statistics. That's what the statistics show, of surviving it with minimal to no problems at all. You will survive.
Yeah. So now you're giving me evidence, right? And so what you do in logic is every one of those sections that I just gave you, everything that appears in there, no matter how small it is, you have to investigate it, evaluate it, and vet it for truth. Okay? So if we're doing some of that, if we're going to look at your evidence, I got your claim, which is that this virus is really only an issue for people that are particularly susceptible.
Primarily, I would say there are a few exceptions because I do know healthy people that got this as well, but you can't pull out healthy people getting it and say that's how all healthy people will react to it.
Right. Okay. So we basically have a claim, and it starts to break down into subclaims very quickly. Yeah. Right.
It has to.
Yeah. And this is the nature of complex issues. And so, but let's hold, like, logic wants to hold you in place so you can have a nice, slow, organized procedural process so that you can get to truth. Communication like this, especially oral communication, hates logic. It does not work well with complex systems. Like, we can confuse ourselves and confuse everybody listening just so fast when you get into complex topics.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to hold you, like I'm trying to slow us down.
Sure.
We can look at each section like this and do some actual logic work on
Sure.
it.
And I'm for it. Let's go.
Okay, so evidence. Like if we're going to vet your evidence for the quality of the evidence that you just gave me.
Yes.
But you do, right? You do tons of this. Like Jimmy Makes Science Simple, looking at science studies. You are constantly vetting evidence.
Right.
Are you a good source as a vetter? Are you an expert vetter?
You guys tried the Paleo Valley beef sticks? These beef sticks are 100% grass-fed and grass-finished, and many of the grass-fed beef sticks on the market today are actually finished with grains. They use beef sourced from small domestic farms in the United States. They only use real organic spices to flavor the beef sticks versus all the conventional spices sprayed with pesticides and other natural flavors from GMO. They also ferment the sticks, which creates naturally occurring probiotics, all great for your gut health, and best of all, they taste amazing. Again, they're Paleo Valley, my favorite beef stick on the market today. Go check them out, you guys. PaleoValley.com. Use the coupon code Jimmy at checkout for 15% off your first order. Paleo Valley beef sticks.
I wouldn't call myself a source. I would call myself a purveyor of information that is getting you to go to the source of said information. So when I do a Jimmy Makes Science Simple, I'm reading from a study. And so I'm giving you the reference of the study. I'm giving you my reading of it and my interpretation. And then you go look at it and you do the same for yourself. And applying it to the masks, you can go in and look at some of the things I talk about. You can look them up. I think part of the problem here, why people are having trouble thinking clearly, at least on this issue, is there's certain kinds of information that are being allowed to be heard, and then certain other kinds of information that are not being allowed to heard. Plus, you've got people from high who are going this and then opposite of this within a span of just a few weeks, months. And that confuses people, and that convolutes the ability to think clearly.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like logic does not like, logic likes simplicity. It's got to break everything back down into simplicity or it won't work. Complex systems can't be jammed through a logic structure.
And people interpret the exact same language in totally different ways. So words will come across to one person very differently than they will come across to another person, which is another little wrinkle in this thing of trying. Clearly, people can't do it because they're hearing what they want to hear based on pre-biases and things like that. So that's another aspect of this. I hope this is interesting for people watching and listening because
this is a technical discussion about logic.
Yes. Yeah.
If you want that, great. This is what it is. There's other ways of doing this, but this is just, if you want to use logic, if you like trying to be a rational human being, this is some training in it. That's all the offer is.
So what else is there? I know you're saying that logic has its limitations. What are the other alternatives?
Oh, there's lots of them. Story is a way of doing this. Religions and supernaturalism as explanations are ways of doing this. And you see a lot of these things fighting out in the world.
Yes.
Logic is just a very organized system. Most people don't get trained to logic.
No.
So they end up using kind of pseudo logic. And that's the nature of the book that I'm writing is like, hey, America, you're in very complicated waters culturally and modern life. And you've got poor training in pseudo logic. That's a bad combination. You probably want to up your training so that you can think through these systems and get to reliable information. But it's not easy. I can't make this a consumption product.
Right. Give an example of pseudo logic in reference, since we were talking about it, in reference to the math. What's a pseudo logic that you think is running rampant out there?
Okay, so one of the things that you do, I mentioned earlier, ethos is character. So if all this stuff is complicated over here, like we're talking about with YouTube, too many words, too many people, too many things, you can't vet the content. Can't do it, no matter what you try. So we move over to a second system, which is let's vet the source. So are you a better source than Fauci?
Well, Fauci goes back and forth on a lot of things, and so I don't think either one of us is a great source, if I'm being honest. I'm not a virologist, he is, but then he's one that unfortunately has done more to confuse than to clear up. I try to speak very clearly when I speak. You may not agree, but at least I speak clearly, but I don't have the authority. So I think we kind of both are valid for that reason.
So this is
what a source, Dan, that's the thing. I'm a purveyor of information that says, here's the information, you go vet it out a little more, look up people, I'm giving you something to think about. And then there's the social media and YouTube and different ones, like the interview you did with Emily, they don't want certain things to get out there. And so that takes away this ability for people to make.
So let me slow you down because you're making lots of subclaims in these conversations.
Sure. I do that.
I asked you a yes or no question.
Okay.
What's an either or? Who is a better source, Dr. Fauci or Jimmy Moore?
Well, that's not yes or no. That's either or. Well, I don't think it's either one of us, to be honest.
Well, we're playing logic now. We're not playing Jimmy Moore dialogue. Okay. In logic, you have to make decisions. And so sometimes you make those decisions, based on evidence and all these kind of things in order to try to get to truth. But just objectively, if we're looking at this on facts, on ethos, which is just credibility, it doesn't mean he's correct. It just means he has better ethos than you, better credibility.
Who was a better man, Hitler or Mussolini? Like it's almost, no, you don't know, because it's almost giving credibility where none is deserved because both are bad.
You're dodging. And in logic,
no,
I get it.
I'm having the conversation because you're presenting with something. You're trying to tell me, you're trying to get me to say Dr. Fauci, and I can't do it because the man, obviously, okay, since you said ethos, from an ethos perspective, it's obviously Dr. Fauci.
Sure. So stop.
What?
We're playing logic. I'm just having you play logic.
I'm having fun. Let's go.
This is what they do to you in courtrooms, by the way.
Oh, I'm aware.
They don't want you to ramble. They don't want you to go into sub-issues. They don't want you to go into context and all this stuff. They want to control things so that they can get to the conclusion that they need you to get to. And that is logic, okay? Yeah. So there's nothing wrong with doing dialogue and being all over the place. That's a natural human communication system. It just doesn't yield very well.
Yeah.
So just on ethos, and this is not whether he's correct or not.
Okay.
It's just who has more credibility. The guy who's been working in virology or whatever 40 years, has a med degree, did the Ebola crisis, has done this all over the world, talked to the best experts everywhere, has the best resources and everything else. Or Jimmy Moore in his...
No, Jimmy's never making any claims that he's better ethos-wise than Dr. Fauci.
Okay. So we've now found a logic good. Like we've done something with logic. We've looked at options, we've looked at evidence, and we've made a decision on, we've got one true fact now. Tony Fauci has better credibility than Jimmy Moore.
From an ethos perspective, yes.
Yes, exactly. And so what a qualifier does in logic is it shrinks things down so you can get it small enough to make factual statements. If you try to expand it back out, so you take it broad instead of very narrow, then you can't make true statements. So all we've done, and this is not to compromise you or anything that you're doing, is found one true statement. That took us, what, 15 minutes?
I think it was axiomatic, to be honest with you, Dan. Anybody would say Dr. Fauci would be, at least from a figurehead perspective.
That's not true at all. Like people have completely slandered and denigrated his ethos. They would go with you.
No. I'm talking about people that are thinking logically, like we're talking about here today. Every single person that would think logically, almost all of them, would conclude that Dr. Fauci is far more of an ethos I guess, persona than anybody else on this, because he's the guy that's been out in front of this from the very beginning, and it, like you said, been in this for decades. Nobody's doubting that. I think the problem with what we're talking about here is the division is partly because of this ethos saying things on both sides of things like masks, that it has made people distrustful of him. Even though he has the moxie, he has the ethos, all the things, he has not endeared himself to the people that might be more persuaded by what he would have to say if he would be consistent in that message.
Sure. So again, you've made 15, 20, 25 claims.
That's what I do, brother.
That's what everybody does when they get into oral logic back and forth, okay? That is the nature of human communication. It's just a flow of claims. But if you're going to use logic and rationality, you can't just flow past you can't throw all those logs into the river and not investigate each one, because you're going to end up, it's a bad process. You're going to end up with bad outcome because you have not followed rationality. So one of the things you said in there was anybody would give Dr. Fauci better credibility. So that's a claim. And true.
The qualifier is someone thinking rationally. The vast majority of people thinking rationally, thinking clearly, like you and I are talking about, applying logic, almost all of those people would think that he is. Like, I'm not claiming that I would be, because that would be silly from an ethos perspective.
But if you understand ethos, though, and this is why rhetoric is so useful, ethos is a wheel. There are a lot of slices. It's like a pie or a wheel turning. And so there's a lot of slices in there of different types of ethos. So he's got expertise ethos.
Yes.
He's got the degree. He's got the experience. He's worked in this particular thing. But the thing you immediately moved over to was like his morality ethos or his political ethos or his communication ability.
Because it matters.
Well, not necessarily. Like if you're just wanting expertise, none of that matters at all.
It does to a lot of people.
So ethos is a wheel. I can just move you to different areas in that wheel. And now we're talking about a different form of ethos. So do you have better morality ethos than Dr. Fauci?
Hell yeah.
Do you?
Yes.
Well, give me your evidence.
Because I'm consistent. When I say things based on me vetting out information, I've done this for a very long time, not as long as Dr. Fauci. I was in diapers when he started doing his work, so that's a long time.
And you still are. Hey.
Hey, yeah, this is why these kinds of discussions, and it's why I wanted you on today. By the way, this is great. I hope you guys are enjoying this between me and Dan. And Dan, he pushes me, I push him back. That's
my point is, I don't care what the outcome is. I'm working on process. I don't care if you believe that masks should be worn over your ear hole.
But the problem is, this is where we are. This is where the contentiousness is. So back to your question. Yes, I feel like I have better character than Dr. Fauci because he's been all over the board. You can't trust him because he's like the worst politician that says this and then the opposite of this and says, see, I was right all along. He can claim that I had the right answer all along, but he also had the wrong answer all along. What you hear out of my voice and people like Keith Norris you were talking about earlier, we're consistent. It's like, okay, we've vetted the information. Here's what we see. And you don't see us really veer off the path of what we've been sharing. Whereas Dr. Fauci, he's kind of done, that's all he's done.
So inconsistency is a moral flaw in your...
Yes. In this case with the masks, because early on he was like, no, they might stop a droplet or two, and then 2 months later, oh my gosh, everybody needs a mask. And 6 months later, oh, everybody needs a triple mask. And it just became this, what's he going to say next kind of thing. And I think once you lie, which when you flip flop on things, consistently keep flip flopping, you're a liar. That gets you pegged character wise as a liar. People can't trust anything you say, even if what you're saying in the moment is correct.
Hey guys, you know I'm all about healthy nutrition, and I have a brand new product I want to tell you about called Athletic Greens. This is not just a multivitamin. It has 75 essential elements that you want to have in your diet, from probiotics to greens to digestive enzymes to prebiotics. There's so many things that they pack into the Athletic Greens. The main reason why I love them is it puts it all in one place. Like literally you'd have to a la carte buy all of these different supplements, and they do it all in one package. So if you go to athleticgreens.com/Jimmy, and you can get a special discount if you go there, and the discount is you get a free 1-year supply of their vitamin D as well as some of their travel packs. Go check it out, you guys. athleticgreens.com/Jimmy.
Okay, so again, you've made tons of claims, right? And you're giving your evidence for why you think those claims are true about Fauci. And we can evaluate that, right? So if you're using logic, like, again, I don't care what you claim. You could tell me Tony Fauci is, Hitler in a mask, that he's actually out to murder everybody. And we could investigate that. Or you could say, like, the other side of that would be Fauci is speaking in public. He was speaking underneath Trump, who was limiting what he said and crushing him back at every juncture when he got up to talk. Had all this political pressure on him. And this is an emerging virus. So nobody has studied this for 10 years. So they don't know exactly what this virus is doing. So you're never going to get a perfect set of information from somebody in that situation. So you're discrediting him, and you're applying this moral judgment about his inconsistency and lying and being political versus saying, hey, this is a complicated environment. He's doing really well, but there's going to be mistakes in here. That's just the nature of this kind of situation.
Mistakes are one thing, but when you consistently kind of go back and forth on issues, it does make it hard for people that are trying to think clearly, trying to understand.
So that word consistently, I want to pull out. That's a qualifier. Okay.
Well, qualifier that applies.
Maybe you're trying to get it in there.
All right.
And me as a logician, it's like, okay.
This is another part of this. People will always bring their expectation of others into this kind of thinking as well. Like, I value my integrity. I value how I do things, and I kind of have that expectation that other people will be like me in that aspect.
And I'm not questioning you, right? I'm not devaluing you.
No. I'm making a point here that me making these claims to you, there will be others that will be like, well, I don't believe like Jimmy does. What's he talking about? I don't think he has that kid. So you see what I'm saying? It's another wrinkle to when you're trying to think clearly, you almost have to go down to the individual basis. There is no collective thinking clearly because everybody brings all their life experiences, all their preconceived notions. There's a lot of things that go into this.
Yeah, it's complicated. And that's why you need logic. You need to understand logic to try to smooth it out and keep it as clean as you can. So, like, let me pull you back to the qualifier word, consistently. I would replace that qualifier, if I'm arguing on the other side, with occasionally. Occasionally, he would make a mistake and then correct it. That's a claim, okay? And it's set out in a logical structure with a qualifier, with some specificity to it. You would say consistently made tons of, direct errors and lied to people. At least that's what I think you've said.
Well, let me be clear. I'm not making judgment on whether he's lying or not, but if you say this and then the opposite of this within a span of time without saying, oops, I was wrong before, one of those times you did lie. So I'm not saying he's lying, but it's like the evidence is showing me he's saying this and then the opposite of this. And now it's which one was right and which one was wrong. You don't know. That's why you can't think clearly.
Right. So in logic, in argument, there's a thing called an enthymeme. And an enthymeme is where you set up all the prior truths, and then you won't say the final conclusion. You make the audience draw that final conclusion. So what you just did there, which you see a lot of people do rhetorically, they don't want to come out and directly stain somebody like Fauci, although a lot of people will. And so you'll be like, hey, if you do this, then people can't trust you. I'm not going to say you're a liar, but that's, going from this will be a lie.
Tell me where I'm wrong. If you say this and then the opposite of this within a period of time and you don't correct where you like, oops, I messed up. I think that's where a lot of this as well, not just with Dr. Fauci, but just in general in life. When people make a mistake and do something and make and says something wrong, then tries to correct it, but they don't say, oh, that before is kind of like newspapers do retractions. They don't do the retraction. They just say the new statement. And then you're like, oh, I guess this is the new normal.
Okay. Well, you're giving me evidence and claims about what he did and what he didn't do.
No, this is about him. This wasn't about him. I'm talking in general.
Yeah, in general. But you've also said this about Fauci. He didn't do a retraction. He didn't say I made a mistake.
Right. Yes.
I don't know. Like, did he or did he not?
I don't know. Like, and if you don't know.
You didn't track everything Fauci has said for the last 2 years and find out whether he did make retractions, how he did these things. All you saw was what came to the media.
True. And there's another wrinkle in this.
Oh, this is the big wrinkle. All our sources are invalid.
Yes, we're getting filtered information. So it's back to the original point of the three prongs that you brought up at the beginning. That information is heavily filtered, and that makes it incredibly difficult to think clearly, because what if that information from the very beginning is wrong?
Sure. So we've got this pool of reservoired information. Some of it's quality information, a lot of it's mixed and mixy, and then a lot of it's bad quality information. And so it's all in the public reservoir, and that's all the media does. It just dumps things in there constantly. And so it becomes a system of, how do I get to the quality information when all this other stuff is being dumped into that same reservoir? And so you basically create your own reservoir of, here are the things that I'm going to pull over and allow into my reserves, and I'm going to believe. And that's what happened with a lot of people on both sides, the people who believe and trust Fauci and masks, and the people who don't. One of the things I saw a lot with anti-vax and anti-mask and things like this, I see a lot of people coming from the libertarian space and from like alternative communities, alternative health, the paleo people. They want to distrust government given information.
We always have.
Right. You've been trained to it.
We always have.
The whole Western med, discrediting all of Western med and all this big discredits, it's very strong in that community. And when it's applied correctly, it's a health benefit for sure, right? Like all the stuff about, low carb eating and or high carb eating and all the stuff that has been discredited within the alternative community during the years, those are probably accurate. I've been in that community forever, and I found great solace in believing that those are accurate. Like keto, all the keto stuff that you've got, all the fasting stuff that you've got, that's all quality information, right?
I think it is.
Yeah, you clearly do. You've based your life largely on that information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into the jab in the arm since you brought it up. And that's another one of these where people are trying to apply logic and also trying to vet through a lot of the layers again, because you've got such a heavy campaign. And I know this is a claim, but you can see it's happening. Heavy campaign to push people to get it. Now, the people that are promoting that would say, well, we need people to get it so that we can end the pandemic. Then you got people that are hesitant because they've seen things and did their own information collecting, and they're doing the analyzing like the steps you were talking about, and they've come to the conclusion that they want to hold off. So help us think more clearly about why there's such the contentiousness here.
So let's talk about, like, when you have issues like this, there are a lot of things impacted in there. So let's just localize it down to the vaccines and people getting it or not getting it. So there's an individual interest in society, like the interests of the individual, self-determination, freedom, government control, not being controlled by other big entities. And that's big in American culture. It's been part of our story forever, individualism, right? Oof.
Yeah.
Don't tell me, Jimmy Moore. On the other side, you have the collective and the community and the interest of the community. And so the vaccine sits right there in the middle of this issue. Like, you not getting a vaccination is more dangerous to the community. It makes you more dangerous to the collective.
How?
Because take away whether it's true or not, whether you believe the vaccine or whatever, the fact, like, if this was Ebola, for example, which kills instantly or very quickly, would you still not get this vaccination?
And therein lies the issue. If this was Ebola, if this was Black Death, which killed like 80 to 200 million people in the UK and just Europe, 80 million to 200 million people died of Black Death. Absolutely everybody and their mama would be taking that. I think what happened here is the threat has been overblown, and people see that. The efficacy of this jab in the arm has been promoted as somewhat high, but then the survival rate of getting it naturally is higher than that. So people applying logic go, well, wait a minute. Why would I do the jab in the arm for 95 when my body's immune system does it for 99+%?
Yeah, I don't know. Like this, now we're getting into evidence. This is what I was talking to Emily Deans about, because she is a med doctor and she's had a very strong interest in viruses. And I'm just listening to her. I'm like, bathe me in your information.
Yes.
I still don't know whether her information is at the top of the mountain or is it 99% up to the top of the mountain? Like, who's at the top of the mountain of information giving me the correct stuff? Because that's the only thing that's useful for human beings. Right now, we're dealing, all of us, with this shitty mid-mountain information.
Yes.
And so we can't make decisions.
So what did, just for my curiosity's sake, because I didn't hear your interview, what did Emily say regarding the jab in the arm?
She's very pro. She's very pro.
A lot of medical doctors are.
Well, and the only thing I remember out of it, and she went through tons of stuff, was that the vaccination protects you against a far wider range of virus mutations and things like that than natural immunity does. Yeah. So but I don't know. I cannot judge any of that information. Well, so that's why in logic, instead of me trudging through that, which is going to be a bad system, and this is what self-determiners tell people to do, and you say it a lot, is, hey, go check it out for yourself.
Yes.
Well, those people are incompetent logicians in that area.
But is that someone, is that the fault of someone making claims and giving that qualifier of go look more? Is it our job to go to the nth degree to spell it all out for people? Or is it smart to say, here's information, now you do with it as you choose?
My grandmother had a 6th grade education, backwoods, New Albany, Indiana. Do I want her making health decisions for herself?
Well, she needs to find good sources of information that she can trust.
She barely read. She could barely read.
Well, she can listen to a podcast or watch a video or...
There's, like, the words we're using right now, she would be so checked out.
Well, this is where her
What do you do with incompetent individuals?
Well, this is where family and people close to that kind of person who is that way. My grandmother was the same way. 5th grade, she dropped out. And so I would be like, man, listen to me. Here's how it is. So then she would have to trust my information.
So now you've gone back to ethos.
Well, you have to in that case. What else is there other than ethos?
Well, ultimately, that's what I'm saying. Self-determinism and making your own decisions about this stuff has flaws in it. I'm not saying throw it out, because that's very strong in human, cultures across the board. Everybody wants to have individual efficacy and control their own lives. but there are flaws in that approach.
Yeah.
The same way there are flaws in the communal approach of the community will tell you what is good and not good for you in specific certain situations. Like right now, the government and almost all the medical doctors are telling you to get a vaccination, and you're ignoring it.
Well, there's red flags that are making me ignore it. Like
maybe you are mammal right now.
When they're offering lap dances, donuts, pizza, like giving away the whole thing.
Because the original appeal didn't work. They're just trying to sweeten
but like, what's it going to get to? Like, I don't want to get graphic here, but they could go like to stuff that's going to hit people right in their primal everything, what they want.
But you know the reason they're using those appeals,
because they work.
They're using those offer sort of benefit appeals instead of it's carrot and stick. They don't want to force people to do this because there's going to be too much resistance.
But at some
point, the normal thing governments do is just force you.
But at some point, that's where it's headed to, Dan. Unless they ostracize and make second-class citizens of people who choose not to do it by saying you can't fly if you don't have this.
Yeah, these are the community, the communal organization from the big collective trying to get the individual to do something. They can do it with offers of incentives, or they can do it with punishments. Which do you want?
But see, here's the thing, and I know there's contentiousness about this issue, but what about personal autonomy? What if the person just says, hey, look,
your individualism, if you want to be an individual.
I've decided that after weighing all the options, it's not something I want to do. Why is that the business of anyone else?
Because it's an infectious disease.
So, meaning, if you've got the jab in the arm, why are you worried about my status with that? Because you're protected. And in fact, Dr. Fauci, I was just right before we came on the air, he did an interview sometime this past week where he said, look, if you've gotten the jab in the arm, you don't have to worry about unjabbing the armed people because you're protected.
Right. Okay. So let's not move into our bundle of, what I call squid nest.
My brain works, dudes.
So when you get into the third thing about communicating logic, I call it a squid nest. So you're just jumping into this tangle, and it's so hard to get anything done because logic tangles.
That's the part.
And logic isn't fun. There is nothing fun about rationality.
Right.
It's anti-fun.
So rationalize what I said.
Well, okay, so like self-autonomy. So again, the collective is more in their mind and their decision, according to the med doctors and the government and yada, yada, yada. We are more safe if everybody is inoculated. More safe.
That's a claim.
That's the claim. Everybody. If we have outliers and people who don't want to do it or whatever, they're always an unpredictable element. We don't know exactly what that's going to do.
And I would say you could look at the areas where the opposite of that is already happening. Places like Florida, Texas. You still have in Austin, right?
Yeah.
So Texas wide open, Florida wide open. A lot of states, even here in South Carolina, we've been relatively wide open. And so not huge spikes in cases, not huge. And our vaccination rate is extremely low, not compared to, say, other states. And so, I don't know. I think you can't blame people for being hesitant if the evidence isn't showing them. I think there's this scale that people do in their heads, and they say, okay, here's a scale on this side, here's a scale on that side, and which one rises? Oh, I should get the jab in the arm. Okay, I'll do it. And so every individual is doing that, even grandma.
No, grandma's not doing that because that's a logical process.
Well, she's doing
checking out.
Listen,
here's what most people are doing.
But listen,
most
she's
people
doing.
See the squid nest, and they check out.
Yes.
Because it's too complicated.
Well,
and they just make a choice.
And
it's not a logical process.
And there are a lot of people who are very trustworthy of certain people, and whatever that person said, it's rampant in the church. I hate it.
It's ethos.
Well, the church says it, so I'm going to do it. And so, Yeah.
Ethos is easy. That's
Yeah.
why people use it. Life
Well,
is very complicated and messy. We need simple. Remember, that's what I said at the very beginning of this podcast. Is we need simple systems because life is a mess. And so when we actually look at the way people are making these decisions, when you throw it back to them like self-determination, I consider that to be a bad piece of advice because almost everybody is incompetent on this issue.
because not
We
every
don't know.
no. Well, and again, like you said about the virus when it first came out, and Dr. Fauci doing what he could do because it was so unknown at the time. Same with these jabs in the arm. We're only like 5-6 months into this. We don't really know the full effects of this, and so that's
Right. We don't have perfect knowledge.
right.
So that's why like an expert like that will be like, according to everything we're seeing, this is my best information.
Right. And then when you see where some things that were said last year have turned out to be not true, it kind of makes people in their head go, well, they're saying things about this jab in the arm now. What about a year from now? Will they still be true or will they be not true?
Right. But that, so again, let's go back to logic. That conclusion of I've seen evidence, I've seen divergent evidence, which is what you just said, right? That they said this and they made these claims and now they're making these claims. There's the evidence here and now there's evidence here. So I'm seeing all this confusion in there. Ergo, I'm going to move to the conclusion of not trust this.
Yeah. How could you not?
Because you can also move to the conclusion of, hey, these are complicated issues. This is a new virus. They're dealing with all these things. I still trust the medical system because they're the experts and they actually do care about getting people well here. And so that's still my best source. I'm still going to go with that source.
Okay, I'm going to throw a monkey wrench at you just to piss
Do
you
it.
off.
Why not? You can't piss me off. This is just logic.
I know. I mean, it's fun is what I'm saying. Is Bill Gates an expert on this?
Clearly not.
But he's out there making claims, making information, pretending to have those.
I haven't heard a thing he said.
You haven't been watching TV then because he's out there.
I don't watch non-experts talk about complicated topics.
Well, good for you. But people are. That's the problem. And so it's just a fascinating conversation.
Yeah, well, again, what logic helps you with, and this is what I do in my life, this is what my life is dedicated towards, is if you understand more about the process and the pool of information and communicating it, you can start to see, oh, okay, I get some way of organizing this, some way of controlling the environment, which is better than just disqualifying the entire environment.
Yeah.
Which so many people have done.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you can't trust anybody. You can't trust the media. There's lots of the media you can trust.
Yeah.
There's segments of the media you can't trust.
Yeah.
There are lots of experts and doctors you can trust, and there are others that you can't. So instead of throwing out the whole baby with the bathwater, which is what so many people do, because they get stuck in logic, it's too much. The world's too complicated. Throw it all out. I just won't trust any of it. That's a bad conclusion because now you're distrusting the actual good sources. So what do you do about that? Like we go to Jimmy Moore, like you're putting an Instagram out there. You've been interviewing experts for decades now. You are very versed in listening to expertise. And I'm sure some of these people that, as you get more into this, like you disagreed with some of their stuff. Like I remember, again, we talked about the McDougal thing. You disagree with everything that guy said, basically.
Pretty much, yeah.
But he's seen by millions as a super expert on this, on health issues.
Including himself.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. Everybody who gets on their Instagram Live or starts a website thinks they're an expert at some level. I don't think you think you're a perfect expert.
No.
I think you think you're a strong expert.
I think I'm one that has credibility.
Has what?
Credibility.
Yeah, with a certain population.
Yeah,
like, do you have credibility with me on health issues? What do you think?
Yeah, and a lot of the people watching and listening right now, same thing. Otherwise, why would you be purposely watching and listening to someone you didn't think had credibility?
Yeah, exactly. So we try to find sources that we think have credibility. Are we competent at judging credibility? Or do we just, it's kind of how we feel. It's an intuition. It moves it over into psychological stuff instead of logical stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I've known you for a long time. I don't trust you on vaccines and masks.
Nor should you.
Why not?
I don't trust me
You're
on
trying
it.
to build trust.
I don't trust me on it because I'm simply presenting a side and then saying, okay, that's what I'm presenting. Now you vet it out for yourself. I'm not telling people take the jab in the arm or not. I'm not telling people wear a mask or not. I'm saying,
but you're not taking it.
Hang on. This is what I'm doing. You do what makes you feel comfortable.
Yeah, and that's a dodge. So in rhetoric,
I like that word dodge. I'm not dodging. I'm telling you how I feel.
I know what you're saying, but you found in rhetoric what would be called a safe harbor. It's a much safer harbor for people now who do have strong opinions and strong expertises and orientations to things, to finish off all their statements with, that's just for me. That's my opinion. You do whatever you want. That's a safe harbor. Okay. But it's a dodge.
Which could be true.
You are clearly
I'm not speaking
on one side or the other.
I'm not speaking for anyone but Jimmy Moore, so that's all I can do. Just as you can't speak really for anyone but Dr. Dan French.
Sure, I can. I'm a trained rhetorician and logician.
Well, okay.
I can look at your process and decide whether you came up with good information or not.
You're the exception, but most people, Grandma, she can't be responsible for anybody but herself.
I don't want her responsible for herself.
Exactly. So, Dan, we're completely out of time. I need to get out of here. But, guys, Dr. Dan French, Rhetoric Warriors is the name
Yes,
of...
I have a new book, 21 Coliseums of Persuasion. Just came out last week.
I was getting there, brother. Work with me here. I've done this a while. Go ahead. The name of the book one more time.
21 Coliseums of Persuasion. And there's a chapter in there on logic.
Yes. And then you're working on another book that'll be a follow-up, I assume coming out like next year sometime. What's the name of it, tentatively?
I write fast. This will probably be in a month.
Okay.
What I'm doing now is going into each one of the Coliseums and expanding so you can go in and see all the weaponry in there.
And the name of that book that you're working on?
Why America Can't Think, and how to make sure that you can. And I think you're great, Jimmy. I think you're working hard on these issues. When I look at it, I don't care what the conclusions are. I care about process. So I always want to go in and what's your process? Where'd you go? How'd you get here?
Well, it's always good to talk these things out. And one of the reasons I wanted you on here today. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you can think more clearly. I think some of the divisiveness is because there's a breakdown in that three-pronged outline that you created. So just work through it. Guys, go look up Dan's work. He's definitely doing a lot of great work on his podcast. Sometimes it's a little bit like, when you bring on people purposely that you don't agree with so you can have conversations. I love that. And I've been on your podcast. So
yeah, well, I don't care what you believe. I just want to look at your process. So
yes. Courtney says, loved it. So many good takeaways. Thank you guys for watching today. Dan, thank you so much, brother. And look forward to keep watching me, man. Keep me honest. I love hearing from you. You're like,
having a hard time reaching my goal weight.
Just use Keto Chow, the magical meal replacement that makes keto easy. Prep takes seconds. Just add the fat you want, Keto Chow, water, and shake. And before you know it, you'll be getting rid of the fat you don't want.
I did it.
I can't believe you're finally here. Oh, I thought you'd be taller.
I know, and I'm wearing heels.
Grab yours today at jimmylovesketochow.com.